This meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 40 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, pursuant to the Standing Order 108, Bracket 2. The committee's meeting on the subject matter of Bill C-19, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 7, 2022, and other measures. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on March 10, 2022, all those attending the meeting in person must wear a mask except for members who are at their place during proceedings. I'd like to take a few moments, make a few comments for the benefits of witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room who wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. I request that members and witnesses mutually treat each other with respect and decorum. I'd now like to welcome today's witnesses, and we have a contingent of officials with us today from 12 agencies and departments: the Canada Border Service Agency, Canada Revenue Agency, Correctional Services, Service of Canada, Department of Citizenship and Immigration, Department of Employment and Social Development, Department of Finance, Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, Department of Industry, Department of Indigenous Services, Department of Justice, Privy Council Office, and Treasury Board Secretariat. And members, just with so many agencies and departments, if your questions, if you do know it's being directed to a particular agency or department, please make sure that you inform that agency or department. That is how you're directing your question. Before we move to member questions, we'll have a formal introduction of our officials by Mr. Nicholas Leswick. Mr. Leswick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nick Leswick, Associate Deputy Minister at the Department of Finance. I'm flanked on my left and right by other officials from the Department of Finance in our financial sector policy area, tax policy, and social policy areas. And we have a number of officials on the line to help navigate the lines of questioning throughout the next hour. Officials only, and then the Minister will appear for the second hour. So here to help quarterback the administration of the meeting, and no other substantive comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yep, point of order.
Just in terms of process, can you help me understand how many days have we set aside to review this piece of legislation, which involves, $56 billion of new spending? How many days have been set aside? Today we've got, I believe it's 56 officials arrayed before us. We've essentially been given 1 hour to ask them questions, and then we've got the minister coming for 1 hour, not 2 hours, as is normal. So you can understand the disappointment that we as Conservatives have, not being able to exercise the oversight and apply the accountability that should normally be applied to a budget of this magnitude. So can you tell me how many days have been set aside for us to ask questions of the officials?
Okay, thank you, MP Fast. So as of this week, we have scheduled for today, and we are scheduled for tomorrow for hearings. And then we've got Thursday. We're also scheduled for Thursday, and then we will be setting the schedule moving forward. But the priority is the BIA, and keeping to previous years in terms of the study of the BIA and the hours that have been put in, be it for hearing from officials, the minister, witnesses. It will be in keeping with that tradition. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So parts 1 to 4 tomorrow and part 5 on Thursday is what we will be doing. MP Albus.
Yeah, well, just keeping in with tradition, Mr. Chair, the previous chair occupant, Mr. Wayne Easter, used to allow it where instead of saying this section will take so much time and we'll go through these amounts of rounds, usually what would happen is that there's some sections where there'd be very little interest in. And so the chair would just say, MP Chattel, if you raise your hand, MP Chambers, you raise your hand, and then we would find that some sections would go faster, some sections would go slower because there'd be more interest from committee members. I would just say that that was a very good process. Obviously, when you have the minister present, that's a little bit different, a little more structure, I think, holds us all to a bit of a higher standard. And while I do have the floor, Mr. Chair, I move that the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Commissioner of the Canadian Revenue Agency to discuss the agency's reported handling of advanced pricing arrangements, among other things, and that the meeting be at least 2 hours.
You cannot move a motion on a point of order.
I believe I can, and it's my intent, Mr. Chair, just to table it and to leave it.
You could do that when you have your time, but at this time you cannot move. You cannot move it.
Well, then we'll use both the time again, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
MP Albus, you'll have an
Mr. Chair?
opportunity. Yes, MP Fast.
I actually hadn't been allowed to finish my point of order. I'm questioning if in fact we're doing parts 1 through 4 tomorrow, I believe it is, and then part 5 on Thursday.
Correct.
What's left to be done after that?
That is
Nothing. So you were saying you have allocated effectively 3 meetings to complete the study of a bill of this magnitude and this size. And please don't refer to precedent. This amount of new spending is effectively unprecedented. This and the previous year is unprecedented in terms of the amount of tax dollars that have been spent and the accountability that should be brought to bear on this kind of legislation. I mean, if we don't do this right, then we're acting irresponsibly.
Yeah. Well, MP Fast, it is the prerogative then of the committee to decide if we want to continue to have witnesses and come in and discuss the BIA.
As long as you're open to that and the committee's open to extending these meetings.
Yes. MP Zerowitz.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say exactly that. Absolutely, I agree with Mr. Fast, and I think everybody agrees here. The Budget Implementation Act is critical. We are spending a lot of money. There needs to be due oversight, and we have to have sufficient time. My understanding is we have a game plan for this week, Mr. Chair, and I know that on Thursday we're going to be deciding on what additional meetings we want to have. If it is determined we need some officials back on any sections as many times as possible, I think we can make that decision on Thursday, and I know I'm very open to that. And I agree that we have to make sure that we feel very comfortable with what has been introduced and what's in this Budget Implementation Act. I'd also say, Mr. Chair, I haven't been on the committee that many years, but I know that sometimes we have our Minister of Finance with us for 1 hour, sometimes we have it for 2 hours. I know that it interchanges depending on the topic and depending on our time limitations. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Zerowitz. And with that, members, we'll move to our officials, and we do have the Conservatives. You have 6 minutes to question our officials. MP Albus.
Well, usually, again, Mr. Chair, there would be like an introductory summary. So I believe that they said earlier that they're not going to be performing that today for this section. Is that correct?
I won't be providing any summary. The minister will have opening remarks when she appears in the second hour.
Okay, well, fair enough. You don't want to outshine the minister. I understand that. In that case, Mr. Chair, since I do have the floor, let me take care of some business first. I move that the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Commissioner of the Canada Revenue Agency to discuss the agency's handling of reported handling of the advanced pricing arrangements, among other things, and that the meeting be at least for 2 hours. So.
Thank you, MP Albus.
Okay, so I would just like to first talk about the form and substance of the BIA. This is C-19. I haven't seen it before where we received a technical briefing, and props to my colleague Terry Beach for offering those to our parliamentarians, but usually that's done on the BIA. Would you, sir, be able to tell me whether or not everything that is in C-19 is what was discussed in the Ways and Means, or are there extra measures in this Budget Implementation Act?
Do you understand that?
I can take this one. Thank you for your question. Well, there are some measures that were not necessarily announced in the budget, in the last budget, but were announced in the previous budget. For instance, the immediate expensing measure, the disability tax credit measure, I believe the film and video production tax credits were not announced per se as new measures in the budget, but they are now in BIA 1.
Okay, so I do appreciate that you're going to try to answer as best you can. And I do, by the way, appreciate everyone's work for our great country. Sir, I have to say you were a little bit quiet, so I put my earpiece on. So I'm going to ask a variation of the same question, and hopefully we can get through this. So can you please start by saying what is in C19 that was not in the previously tabled Ways and Means motion, that a technical briefing was given by over 2 nights last week by the parliamentary secretary? If you could just itemize those, please, and then we'll get into which budget they fell under before.
I will have to turn to Lindsay Guire because I'm not in a position to answer that question.
Yeah, so in terms of the technical briefing that was given last week, so that was on the notice of Ways and Means motion. So the items in part 1 of the bill, so that's the income tax part, those are all the same. What's in the BIA is the same as what was in the notice of Ways and Means motion, so there's nothing additional. My understanding is it would be the same for the other parts, although I can only speak for certainty with respect to part 1.
So I guess I'm just going to ask that members of the committee bear in mind that when I ask the same question of every single group to come forward, just to make sure that essentially what was given a technical briefing on is in form and substance the exact same as what is in C19. And if there are differences, I'd like to hear a rationale from officials. So warning just to you and your colleagues. Sir, you did mention earlier in your first response to me that I could have a little difficulty hearing something about that there are measures in this BIA that were in previous budgets. Could you just maybe recite that a little more clearly, please?
Yes, and sorry, I misunderstood the question first. But yes, there are some measures there that are just legislating measures that were announced before budget 2022. For instance, the immediate expensing measure, the disability tax credit, the film or video production tax credits. Now, I don't necessarily have all the list in front of me, but these are some of them: the postdoctoral fellowship income, and a few technical items as well. It's not necessarily exhaustive, as I said.
Okay. Was the changes to the Senate and the positions that would be made available on the Senate side, was that in the Ways and Means motion?
I don't believe it was in the Ways and Means motion, but I'd have to verify with you, Mr. Member.
Would you be able to supply the committee with a list of things that were, and if you could please put it, that were in the Ways and Means motion that is also in C19, but also what other measures are in C19 that were not in the Ways and Means motion, and under what category they'd be captured under? I think the committee would be much better suited, to understand how large this bill is, because it's my understanding it's one of the largest that the government has put forward, and the government always says better is always possible. So I would hope that officials would agree that explaining that to parliamentarians point by point would be better.
Thank you for. I think that's a great approach, and we'll come back very quickly with an itemized list in accordance with the framework the member outlined.
Okay, so again, the doubling the allowable qualifying expense limit under the home accessibility tax credit, that was something that was in budget 2021, was it?
That was in this budget 2022.
Okay. I thought Mr. Jovanik, Jovanik, is that how you pronounce it?
Jovanovic.
Jovanovic, okay. Thank you.
Time, and now we'll move to the Liberals, and we have MP Baker up for 6 minutes.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our officials who are here today, both on screen and in person, and for your hard work every day on behalf of Canadians. My first question, in my riding of Etobicoke Centre, a lot of folks are concerned about fiscal responsibility. They want us to make sure that we have the programs in place that are needed to support Canadians, but they also to grow our economy, et cetera. But they also want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible. And one of the components of that I get asked about regularly is debt management. And in Annex 2 of the budget, there is a section, or the Annex 2 speaks to the debt management strategy. I'm just wondering if you could sort of walk us through in terms that my constituents could understand what our debt management strategy is, what are our plans going forward as far as the federal debt goes.
Yep, thank you for the question. I mean, happy to do that in just high-level, broad terms. So, over the course of the pandemic, it was necessary that the government issued a lot of debt to fund programs, COVID emergency response programs, and fill gaps with respect to interruption in revenues over the course of the pandemic, with respect to obviously the economic contraction through 2020 and into 2021. The government had committed to funding this debt program through the extension of its term, the term structure of the debt. So edging more into the long end of the yield curve, so longer duration bonds. And so you see that reflected in the debt management strategy. So as interest rates are at historic lows, albeit creeping up gradually as the economy strengthens, a bulk of the debt was funded at the long end, and so you see that reflected in the chapter you reference.
And so what I hear you saying is interest rates are low. Generally speaking, yields or interest rates on bonds, which are the mechanisms through which the government borrows, tend to be higher the longer the term of the bond. But given rates are low, what I hear you saying is the government has tried to borrow for over longer term periods at lower rates to keep the cost of servicing that debt low in the future. Is that right?
Yes, thanks for the question. That's exactly right. Extending the kind of term to maturity of the entire debt stock, and to execute on that, we issued more bonds at the longer end, so more at the 10, the 30, and even the ultra long bonds to kind of extend that maturity structure of the debt.
Okay. So if I was trying to relate this back to sort of my own financials, my own personal finances, I might think about, and many Canadians, certainly Canadians who've bought homes, have had to go out and get a mortgage can relate to this, right? You can borrow at a variable rate, get a mortgage at a variable rate, you can lock it in at 2 years or 4 years or 5 years. And generally speaking, if you lock in at 5 years, that's usually the longest term that a bank will offer, but it allows you to have a lower rate for a longer period of time. And what I hear you saying is we're locking it in over, in some cases, 30 years to make sure that Canadian taxpayers for 30 years in the future are paying at today's lower rate. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, those are the principles. I mean, we're cautious as well. Like, we're trying to find that sweet spot between managing the cost and risk dynamics. So we're just that rollover risk dynamic that I think you're referencing, and then just the actual cost structure as well. Obviously, when you borrow shorter, it's cheaper, and borrow longer, it's more expensive. So we're trying to find that sweet spot. But fundamentally, the government has chosen to extend the term structure of the debt to play into the principles that you speak to.
Okay, and so again, for my constituents, what's the benefit of that to them? Like, what's the benefit of locking in a low these I'll call them lower rates over the longer term? Why should that matter to my constituents?
Well, obviously, it feeds into lower public debt charges if you think your base case is a perfect prediction of the future. I mean, economists, including myself, have never been all that great at predicting the future path of interest rates. So I'm cautious to be too dogmatic on anything I say in this regard. But I mean, again, it plays to the principle that when interest rates are low and you can lock in some debt at those low rates, that you have a view that is beneficial in terms of your overall interest charges and what those look like, what the outlook for those are going forward.
Right, and presumably that leaves more resources available to Canadians to the federal government for other programs. Is that right? The lower the debt servicing cost, the lower the more money we have for other things.
Right. I mean, interest charges are one portion of what the government spends money on, and the lower those are, I guess the greater their availability to spend money on other things.
Great. I think I have about a minute left, if I'm not mistaken. About 1 minute. So this is a question to our folks at Global Affairs, who I believe are represented here today. in the Act, there's a measure that would allow Canada to seize and cause the forfeiture and disposal of assets held by sanctioned people and entities. And I guess my question is, do we know approximately what the value is of the assets that are held by those people and entities sanctioned by Canada because of their support of Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
I do not have those numbers, but I will turn to colleagues at Global Affairs. They may be able to provide additional comments on this.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me. My name is Lynn McDonald, Director General, International Economic Policy at Global Affairs Canada. In fact, those numbers are disclosed to the RCMP, and so we are not in possession of the latest figures, but those would be disclosed by Canadians' financial institutions and others as a result of the dealings prohibition of the CIMA, and they would be directed to the RCMP, who I understand keep a careful sort of up-to-date record of the latest information in that regard. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to disclose that information because we may not have the most recent figures. Thank you.
That's the time. Now we'll have questions from the bloc, and MP Saint-Marie for 6 minutes.
Oui, alors, merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everyone. Thank you to all of the officials for being here. My first questions will be for finance. It's about the new luxury tax on cars, boats, and planes. First, I would like to know if the department has assessed the economic impact of introducing this tax on the manufacturing sector in Canada in terms of their sales numbers and jobs that could be lost with this measure. Thank you.
Une telle évaluation.
This evaluation has not been completed. However, the government has consulted the sector extensively in order to make sure that this tax would not have terrible effects on the sector. Thank you for the answer, but I find it very concerning, and I think that it's a shame that the government has applied a 20% tax, which could have a very grave impact. Even if we agree on the objectives that are noble at the base, it can have a very great impact on jobs and important sections of the sector. I think this is unacceptable. Second question for the department. Do you know, or have you assessed ways to reach the objectives of this tax without leaning so heavily on jobs and economic activity in these manufacturing sectors that are so important? Thank you.
La taxe a été.
The tax was designed to have an effect on margins of vehicles that are being sold at a very high cost. I'm not sure I can say much more to this question. Thank you. Now, more specifically, what we're seeing is that the aerospace industry in Quebec and Canada and the business sector in Quebec are mobilizing because currently there's a lot of uncertainty and concern about this tax. One, for aircraft that will be exported, and two, for the personal use aspect compared to business use, which represents 90% on the interpretation and application of it. As you know, I broached this topic on multiple times with the Ways and Means motion, and the industry is activating, and we need answers and clarification with regards to the application of this tax. During the technical brief, I was told that for the second part that I raised, that the 90% threshold would depend on the CRA's interpretation. So let me give you some examples that the industry have raised And I'd like to know if finance or the CRA would have answers to these questions. We need clarification before we can possibly vote on this bill. So now the threshold is 90% of business use. What we're saying is that when a business, say business A, buys an aircraft for business use, when the aircraft is not used by the business, it is let to a second business, business B, a charter, that will rent it to other people in order to maximize flight time and to amortize the cost of the aircraft. So if business A rents it out for personal use today, can the officials tell us if this will be considered as personal or business use? Because business B will have sublet the aircraft for personal use. Thank you.
Si l'appareil est
If the aircraft is used for personal use at the end of the line, the flight time will not be counted in the 90% use. That would be the responsibility of the purchaser to make sure through contracts that the use of the aircraft qualifies and that the aircraft is not used for personal use, or at least not more than 10% personal use. Okay, thank you. Thank you, because this is the first time that we've obtained such a clear response on this question, but I have to say that this is not the response that the industry was hoping for, because they will be very concerned. I'm going to ask the minister this same question in a few minutes, because what the industry is saying is that the manufacturer has to make sure that the purchaser, business A, will use it for business uses for 90% of the time, but that business is not entirely in control of the use of the aircraft because it's working with business B, and business B has to rent out the plane and doesn't know in advance what it will be used for. So it's very difficult on a planning front. I hope there will be some changes to the regulations or to the bill to make everything a little more streamlined and easy to use. Before the pandemic, the aerospace industry was suffering, and now commercial aviation is starting to recover, and everyone is leaning on this. And now we have an act that is coming to cause problems to the industry, and it's very concerning. But I thank you for this clear answer. Something else, Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left? Your time is up, Mr. St. Marie. How much time do I have left?
OK, je vais revenir avec d'autres questions. Merci.
Yeah, merci, Monsieur St. Marie. And now
Thank you, Mr. St. Marie.
the NDP, MP Blakey, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. I wanted to start with a question about the proposed changes for the establishment of an EI Board of Appeal, or a new way of doing that. And one of the mentions in the bill says that the Board of Appeal wouldn't be able to consider any questions of a constitutional nature. Now, I know earlier this year the tribunal issued a decision highlighting sex discrimination in the EI Act, particularly in regards to maternity leave provisions and the way that they interact with eligibility for regular benefits. I'm wondering if that exclusion in the Act would, first of all, make it so that the tribunal can no longer issue decisions like that lean on the Constitution to provide feedback about the overall EI system, and whether that could have any retroactive effect on decisions like the one from earlier this year. So I would put that question to whoever the most appropriate official from the Department of Employment and Social Development would be.
Good morning. Any cases that are already in the system will continue to conclusion without any impact. New cases that have constitutional elements will go directly to the second level and will be heard by the SST Appeal Division.
Okay, so it's not that cases like that couldn't be heard at all. It's just that they would proceed immediately to the most senior level of appeal. Is that a fair understanding of what's being proposed in the bill?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you. In respect of measures in the Act that are essentially assuming the kind of burden of what was in C-17, there's money there, health transfer money for surgery backlogs, but there's also some money for a combination of housing and transit. It's not exactly clear the terms and conditions under which that money is supposed to be provided to provinces. And therefore, I think it's kind of hard for parliamentarians to know what they're being asked to authorize in that provision. Can someone from the department give some character to how they see funds rolling out? I think it's $750 million total in that package. How you see that rolling out and what the plans for reporting out on that money and what's been secured with that money are.
So I'm happy to take that question. Alison McDermott from the Department of Finance. So this is what your question was about, how the original payment authority, which was included in Bill 17, was essentially, I think to answer that in simple terms, that was just merged into this new bill so that when this bill receives royal assent, the government will have the authority to make those payments. And then you had some questions about what were the requirements. And so the government wanted to provide this funding to help municipalities deal with the costs of the revenue shortfalls associated with the public transit ridership declines that occurred during the pandemic. They wanted to do a little bit more in terms of incenting provinces to support housing building, housing construction as well. So a couple of broad requirements that were asked of provinces in order to be eligible to receive the funding. There was a requirement to match the federal contribution. There was a requirement to allocate more or less according to transit ridership among their municipalities. So it's to pass on that funding to municipalities to achieve the objective of the payment. And that was meant to be used towards transit operating shortfalls, or could be used towards investments in transit capital or investments in housing. And there was an understanding or request that provinces agreed to kind of undertake to work with the municipalities to accelerate their efforts to improve housing supply in collaboration with those municipalities.
So I guess that's where I'm trying to figure out how the money really is to be spent. I mean, I think, saying that the federal government wants to continue to support operating funding shortfalls for transit authorities across the country is pretty straightforward. We've seen the government do that from time to time during the pandemic. How does the federal government see these kind of potential housing interactions take place, or what can you give a concrete example of a policy that a province or a municipality could adopt that would satisfy the federal government that there's some kind of meaningful investment in housing that's somehow related to transit? I think we're a little starved for examples of what the government has in mind.
To give you a bit of a sense of what was actually asked of provinces, there was exchanges of letters with provincial governments and conversations. And basically, the federal government asked them to commit to take further action on housing, working with their municipalities. So we have letters from all the provinces committing to do that. And they also committed to report publicly on the kind of changes that they make. So the kinds of things that we're looking at are, a lot of experts have, through the Canada-BC expert panel on housing, but also Ontario had its own panel. The kind of advice that we've received from these experts suggests that a lot of the impediments to housing development are actually at the municipal level. So this is why the federal government thought that in providing some housing support to municipalities, it would be useful to get some assurances back from them that they're committed to it.
Thank you.
Why
Thank
the
you,
national
MP Blakey.
housing
That's
strategy wasn't
we're
chosen
well
as
over
the vehicle
time.
for
But
that?
thank you, MP Blakey. And we're moving now to our second round of questions. And we have first up MP Chambers for the Conservatives for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the officials who've joined us today. It takes a lot of work to put together a bill of this size. It's one of the largest ones we've seen, so thank you for all of your hard work. I'm glad we're not billing by the hour with the number of people we have, but it's good to have so much intellectual capacity here. My colleague, Mr. Baker, started by talking a little bit about fiscal responsibility, so perhaps I'll take that opportunity just to ask a few high-level questions. What is the spending growth from this year projected versus the year just before COVID? So that's the 19-20 year versus the 2022-23 projected year. Is that While we look it up, I'll give you the numbers that I see, and maybe we can see whether they're correct. In 2019-20, it was about $386 billion, I believe, $360 billion, and in 2022, about $450, rounding some numbers. That includes the debt management charge. Is that about right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's 25%. So if we want to talk about fiscal responsibility, 25% increase in spending post-pandemic versus pre-pandemic, and that doesn't include, any of the spending that's part of COVID. That's ignoring that. Second question, what's the average spending growth year over year from 2015 to today? My numbers say it's about 7 to 8%. Is that correct?
I think that would be in the ballpark. Like, I don't know. I don't want to verify that specifically, but let's say 6 to 8%.
Perfect. And going forward, though, from this budget projecting out through the forecast, we have spending growth projected somewhere between 2 to 3% a year. Is that about the ballpark?
I'll agree just based on the, I don't have a calculator in front of me.
Okay,
But
so
based on, yeah.
This is what the calculations kind of show. And can we confirm there's no money for pharmacare in this budget, correct?
Correct.
And no money for sustained long-term increases to the Canada Health transfer, right? There was the one-time kind of $2 billion.
Yep. That's right.
Okay. And no money for other promises that are part of perhaps the agreement with the NDP or other promises that may come up next year. So
Can I just add one caveat
Yes.
on your statement about healthcare? Is that as a result of the stronger economic growth that we've seen as coming out of the pandemic and as a result of the government's actions, GDP growth is much higher than it was in a pre-pandemic state, and the amount of CHT that will go to provinces is about $12.6 billion higher than it was before. So that's included in this budget forecast.
Thank you. That's actually, I'm really glad you raised that, because we're to believe that after a government who has spent 7 to 8% increases per year every year, that all of a sudden there's a newfound fiscal restraint religion that will keep expenditures increasing only to 2 to 3% a year. But we are reminded that there's inflation and growth that will give the government more revenue to spend. So the next question, how much more revenues does the government have to spend over the forecast, the next 5 years, that it did not believe it had last year? So how much more revenue does the government have to spend over the next 5 years that it did not project from just 1 year ago?
I certainly follow the line of questioning. I can't offer the kind of
no problem. I've done the math. So if we look at budget 2021, then you compare the revenues from budget 21 projected out through the forecast and the budget revenues from budget 22 out through the forecast. There's $170 billion of extra revenue that the government is going to get over the next 5 years, or projected to get, versus what it thought it was going to get last year. So in fact, the entire fiscal plan of the government is based upon inflation. And you don't have to answer that question. That's more of a political statement and not a question fair enough for officials. but the entire fiscal plan of the government is based on inflation staying high, because that's the only way they're going to be able to pay for any spending promises. So that, to me, is an interesting observation. More of a question, how many civil servants have we decided through the forecast on a gross and net basis will be added, that we're projecting to add over the next 5 years? Is that a number that we could get, recognizing my time is up, Mr. Chair, but if we can't provide that here today, if we could get that in writing, that would be very helpful from the Treasury Board Secretariat.
Thank you. And if we can look for that answer, we're moving now to the Liberals, and we've got MP Zarowitz up for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to also thank all the officials for their excellent work and for being here today. As Mr. Chambers says, these budgets are huge amounts of work, and really appreciate everybody being here. I just wanted to comment just off at the top very quickly. I think Mr. Chambers, asked some really excellent questions, and I think we'll get some additional information from you. I think it's just for those that are listening, it's really important when we're doing comparisons to before COVID, and we're making those comparisons, you have to take into consideration the geopolitical situation and crisis that's underway right now, the high levels of inflation that hasn't been seen in almost 3 decades that we're experiencing right now. We're still fighting COVID. We're still helping the Canadian economy to recover in many ways. And in terms of just even looking at inflation staying high for the next 5 years, I don't think anybody can make any predictions given the fact that the world's highly unpredictable right now. But I just want to provide some of those additional comments just because I think it's important for us to have that in mind as we have this conversation. Where my mind goes right now is my first question is about the labor market and jobs recovery. My understanding is that Canada has recovered quite well in terms of jobs recovery since COVID has, since where we were at when COVID first started. So my understanding is that we recovered about 112% of the jobs, whereas in the United States, I think their employment levels are still 2.3% below pre-pandemic levels. Can someone confirm that, please?
No, thank you for the statement. And yes, I can confirm that.
Thank you. So we still have 1 million jobs. This is what the numbers around. There's a 1 million jobs that still need to be filled in Canada. And so there's a lot of small businesses and businesses in general that are saying we are looking for people and we're looking for talent. We're looking for more Canadians. Is there anyone, whether it's anyone here in the room or someone from the Department of Citizenship and Immigration or Employment and Social Development that can speak to what is in Budget 2022 that's going to help address the significant labor shortages that we have right now?
Thank you for the question. I mean, I'll take a shot at it, and you're exactly right. The labor market recovery has exceeded expectations, and on, all sorts of labor market metrics, whether it be just employment creation, hours worked, participation rate. We're completely outperforming where we thought we'd be, 6-12 months ago, and it's exacerbated into some of these labor market shortage, which we're seeing on a pan-Canadian basis, like we're seeing across the country. And so the government's made efforts on 2 fronts, really. So just like pure labor supply, so just how many hours worked in the economy, and then addressing elements of skills matching and skill shortages in certain areas. So on labor supply, a couple of things. One is the government did make a huge effort in terms of moving forward to implement the National Childcare Program, Early Learning and Childcare Program last year, which would hopefully catalyze the participation of new parents into the workforce. Likewise, a pretty ambitious immigration program as well, which brings in new Canadians and new workers into the country. Again, just from a pure labor supply perspective. And on skills, it's a combination of skills training programs, so sectoral support programs that were announced in the last budget, foreign credential recognitions, temporary foreign workers, which I know straddles both labor supply and also just skills matching. So there's been a number of initiatives to advance on both those streams.
Thank you. That's excellent, and I think that's very helpful. My second question is, housing has been an increasing crisis in our country, and I know that is true for the residents of my riding of Davenport. In the budget, we are applying a GST HST to assignment sales. So first, if you can explain the assignment sales, just so the general public actually understands that, but how does applying a GST HST to assignment sales help address the housing situation in Canada?
Thank you for your question. So, well, first, an assignment sale is typically when you actually are holding a title to acquire a piece of real estate. Let's say a condo that you purchased at a phase of construction, for instance. Prices have increased. Now you have an interested buyer. What you're doing, you're assigning this contract to the buyer for additional compensation. So you first purchased that for $500,000, let's say, or $300,000, and now it's worth $600,000. So the new buyer will give you an additional $200,000-$300,000. So that's typically an assignment. Right now, if you've disposed of that title with the intent, if the intent to originally purchase that property was to occupy as your principal residence, you don't necessarily have to register at pay GST HST on that additional, or the purchase doesn't have to pay GST HST on that additional value. We were a bit concerned, particularly now, given the state of the market, that relying on that intent was probably a bit weak as a position. So the proposal is to basically require on all assignment sales, regardless of the intent, to charge GST and HST on the appreciated value, basically. So that would ensure that it's applied evenly across all transactions and, in a way, help deal with speculation in the market.
Apply. Well, if we don't have,
yeah,
please respond to that. That would be really great in writing. Thank
now
you.
we're moving to the block, and Monsieur Sainte-Marie for 2.5 minutes, please.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Just point of order, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of chatter in the room, and often I cannot hear the answers of those who are our guests today or speaking before. If we could just please make sure that we just keep the talking to minimum. Thanks.
Thank you, MP Zarowitz. Yeah, we do want to hear all the answers to the many questions, and so MP Sainte-Marie, please.
Oui.
Thank you again. So going back to the luxury tax on aircraft to be used for, when they are used for personal reasons. Now, I understand that this tax is on sales in Canada and not for aircraft which are exported. However, the way the tax is built, the manufacturer pays the tax on all aircraft, including those for export, and once they're exported, then the aircraft manufacturer can be reimbursed. And this is done on a quarterly basis, as we were told during the technical briefing. What the industry is concerned about and is telling us is that very often that quarterly basis is problematic. Concretely, when an aircraft is sold to somebody abroad, the aircraft could stay in Canada several more months, being amended and custom tailored to the buyer's taste. So this may take more than 3 months. And since the main aircraft manufacturers or manufacturer exporting aircraft, says that this is a very large proportion of production. We're talking about roughly 90%. That obliges this manufacturer to deal with a liquidity shortfall because they have to advance the luxury tax for the entire production run, whereas a very small proportion of aircraft are sold to Canadians or in Canada. So net, this can represent several $100 million that have to be advanced because the tax is designed that way. So my question for the Department of Finance is this. Was this problem foreseen? And if so, what solutions can you propose? Thank you. That question has been brought to our attention, and we now understand the issue. We are currently examining it, and we've taken it under advisement to see whether there is a way of proposing some adjustments. This is something that we are discussing, that we have discussed recently with the industry, and we understand it better now. So it's under advisement. Thank you. That's your time.
And we're moving out to NDP and MP Blakey for 2.5 minutes.
Sure. Could I just get someone to confirm the date that the Canada Emergency Sickness Benefit and the Canada Emergency Caregiving Benefit are coming to an end? I imagine somebody from ESDC has that number ready to hand, or that date.
I want to say May 7th, but I want to be very cautious, so I just would invite someone from ESDC just to speak up.
I believe it is indeed May 7th. I don't want to lose all my time to ESDC trying to find the right person to answer the question.
That's correct, Mr. Blakey. They are scheduled to end May 7th.
Thank you. And so when it comes to the large employer emergency financing program, I'm wondering what the date of expiration for that program is.
I apologize. I'd have to get back to the member.
Okay.
Again, I'm just cautious on dates in terms of new financing arrangements and when the facility was closed.
In that case, I'm wondering whether there is even a date. And I'm noticing that when it comes to larger companies, I think you have to have a revenue of at least $300 million in order to qualify for the large employer financing program. There doesn't seem to be a date, or at least I'm not aware of one, whereas the worker support measures are coming to an end on May 7th. And I just wonder if how it is that the government can believe on the one hand that the pandemic is over in respect to workers, and how they can believe that it continues in respect of large companies. Because surely if one no longer requires support, it would stand to reason that the others no longer require support. So maybe there's somebody that, well, a little bit more familiar with the details of the large employer financing program that could explain why it is the pandemic continues for well-resourced companies, but not for workers.
Again, I apologize to the member. I don't have the dates, and I don't believe there's anyone on the line that would speak to the dynamics of the LEAF facility.
Well, I would happily accept a follow-up in writing for the committee on that question. And also curious to know from ESDC what the numbers are right now in respect of the Canada Emergency Sickness Benefit and the caregiving benefit in terms of, for 2022, how many people have been accessing those programs? And again, if they'd like to follow up in writing with the committee, I'd be happy to receive that information in writing.
Thank you, MP Blakey. That is the time. And then, members, I'm just looking at the time. At the top of the hour, we have about 7 minutes left. I've got in this round, the Conservatives and the Liberals up, so we'll split that 3.5 minutes each, and that'll take us to the top of the hour. MP Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the officials for being here today. I want to paint a little picture of where I live, Miramichi Grand Lake in New Brunswick, and how this budget affects them. Miramichi Grand Lake my riding is the size of Prince Edward Island. There's probably about 2 places to plug an electric car in. Most people that order them are waiting a year, sometimes 2, because they can't get them. And of course, the government has basically stood by and watched China grow its ability to produce lithium. So people where I live, they drive SUVs, trucks, muscle cars. They have boats. We have a marina. We live on one of the greatest salmon fishing rivers in the world. The million jobs referred to here today, we're not seeing them. It's nice to hear. We don't see them in Miramichi Grand Lake. We were a port facility in Miramichi dating back to the mid-1800s, right up until the early 90s, and then it slowed. So in recent years, the river hasn't been dredged. A company from Quebec wanted to dump $12 million of their own dime into the port, Groupe de Gagné, they were called. And the government's role was to fix the navigational aids, $1.5 million. They said no, which stifled a minimum of 15 to 20 companies that would have been producing wood pellets, lobster, wood products, steel, fabrication products. Basically, the current government has stifled every economic opportunity we had locally. Now, this budget, with respect to it, inflation is currently 6.7%. It's 7.4% in New Brunswick. But in my home province, it's, as I said, much worse, with no sign of it slowing down. I don't see immediate relief for Canadians. inside of this budget. I'm not seeing it, but I'm going to ask the officials today, what in Bill C-19 is going to address the inflation crisis that Canadians and Miramichi Grand Lakers are facing today? Thank you.
It's a difficult question to answer, quite honestly. I don't think I'm going to pick any one element out of this bill, but from a macroeconomic objective, and I mean, this isn't much of a response in consideration of the local, regional, issues, hardships faced by your community, Mr. Member. But it's to take the edge off inflation over the coming quarter and get it back to target, and to normalize both fiscal and monetary policies so that the economy is operating at full capacity, but there aren't these negative spillovers from high inflation and affecting households and businesses, for sure.
Still.
I still have time?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm not sure really there was a response in there, and I can't fault the officials for the political decisions of the government either. But with private investment already down, I've told you about the project that was stifled locally, $12 million out of the pocket of a private company for the government to pay $1.5 million for the buoys. That's a drop in the bucket for the federal government, and this government in particular, that's a major drop in the bucket. So did the department consider how Part 4 of this bill will impact private investment into the economy? And if so, what did you consider and how did you go about it? Thank you. Go ahead.
Listen, again, it's not very region or locale specific. I mean, the government and the department does their best.
No, sorry, I don't mean with respect to the region. I just mean with respect to the bill itself. Yeah.
So you're referring to the Select Luxury Items Tax Act. As I previously mentioned, we don't have a specific estimate. We believe that the way the measure has been designed so that it really targets the top higher end of luxury vehicles and boats and aircrafts, that the impact would be reasonable.
Thank you.
I see the minister has arrived. She's in the room. We are just going to go to the Liberals. MP Chattel, you have one question for officials, and then we'll move to the minister. Okay, thank you.
Microphone, please. Microphone, please.
Avec l'Australie, qui a mené.
Can we be placed into context the rule with Australia, which related to the exemption of excise tax for Canadian wine producers? C-19 is proposing to eliminate the existing exemption, and that is as a result of an agreement following Australian action at the World Trade Organization. And this dates back to 2018. The agreement states that the exemption was to be eliminated by the end of June of this year. So the proposal here is to eliminate it for those products which are made and packaged after this date. And there will be a program over 2 years of worth $100 million. And this is set up by Agriculture Agri-Food Canada.
And I want to thank the officials on behalf of the Finance Committee. Thank you very much for coming before us. I know members had many questions, and there are some follow-up and some follow-up information that I'm sure the officials will be looking to gather to be able to provide to this committee and to the members. So thank you very much. You are free to go on with your day. Have a great day.
A few of us will stay at the table just
you
to
will be
support the
staying at the
minister
table.
during
Okay.
her testimony. Thank you.
Great. So now we have our minister with us. Welcome the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Thank you for coming before our committee, Minister. You're going to have an opportunity now for opening remarks and then to receive questions from members. So thank you very much for joining us here today. The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee, for inviting me here to speak to you today on the subject of Bill C-19, the Budget Implementation Act. I do apologize for having to join you virtually. I was supposed to be with you in person, but my flight has been canceled this morning because of fog in Toronto. The budget that I tabled last month took into consideration the remarkable and quick recovery of Canada after the recession caused by COVID-19. Canada has seen one of the quickest recoveries in employment in the G7. We have recovered a large proportion of the jobs that we lost during this terrible pandemic, as compared to 93% of jobs recovered in the United States, whereas we had 115% approximately. Over 3 million jobs were created or recovered. Our unemployment rate has now dropped to 5.3%. This is the lowest rate since we began to track data of comparables roughly 5 decades ago. Our actual GDP is 1.5% above what it was before the pandemic. According to the IMF, Canada's economic growth is the strongest in the G7 this year and will continue to do so in 2023. Last Thursday, another piece of good news, S&P confirmed once again our AAA credit rating.
We owe this in part to the support measures that we put in place to help Canadians and to help the Canadian economy. We also owe this to the courage and determination of Canadians that throughout the last 2 years.
Do you have challenges ahead? The existential threat of climate change, which is why, with the investments outlined in this budget and through Bill C-19, our government is focused on growing our economy and making life more affordable for Canadians. One of the pillars of our plan is investing in the backbone of a strong and growing country, our people. People need homes in which to live. But, Mr. Chair, Canada simply does not have enough of them. This budget represents the most ambitious plan that a federal government has ever put forward to tackle that fundamental issue, and it will put Canada on a path to double the number of new homes we will build over the next 10 years. We also need to make the housing market fairer, which is why, for example, Bill C-19 will legislate a 2-year ban on foreign investors. Homes need to be for Canadian families to live in. They cannot be a speculative asset class. We will also make all assignment sales of newly constructed or renovated housing taxable for GST and HST purposes. And something which I know members of this committee care about deeply, Bill C-19 will help seniors and people with disabilities live and age at home by doubling the home accessibility tax credit's annual limit to $20,000, which will make upgrades like wheelchair ramps more affordable. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, a growing country and growing economy requires that our labor market grow. Thanks to C-19, we will make sure that it's easier for qualified immigrants to settle in Canada, and our economy needs them greatly. This will allow us to increase the government's capacity to select candidates within the express entry system and to choose people that meet the business's needs. Will also be investing in the determined and talented workers that are already here. We will make it more affordable for people who have specialized employment to move where the jobs are. The bill proposes to create a labor market mobility measure. This will provide up to $4,000 in tax incentives for moving costs and settlement costs. This measure is part of the efforts we're making to tackle the labor shortage.
Our government's work to ensure we have a robust tax system where everyone pays their fair share. Through this legislation, our government will speed up the creation of a public registry of federally incorporated corporations to before the end of 2023, 2 years earlier than planned, to help counter illegal activity, including money laundering, corruption, and tax evasion. And let me point out, this is only a first step. This work is particularly pressing as Canada works hard with our allies through the new Russian elites, proxies, and oligarchs task force to target the global assets of Russia's elites and those who act on their behalf. This brings me to how Bill C-19 will allow the government to cause the forfeiture and disposal of assets held by sanctioned people and entities and use the proceeds to help the people of Ukraine. Among our allies, Canada is leading the way on this effort. We would be the first member of the G7 to take this important step, and I can think of few better ways to pay for the very expensive rebuilding of Ukraine than with the seized assets of Russia's leaders. Et pour gagner du temps, Monsieur.
And to gain time, I will quickly list a few of the other measures that are planned for in C-19. These measures will receive the support of members of this committee and from the members of our House. I'm certain of it. C-19 plans to put a tax on luxury cars, on aircraft, and on boats. It also plans to provide a tax reduction for businesses that develop zero-emission technologies. It would also add 10 sick days for workers in areas like aerospace, rail, and maritime transportation, as well as banking and postal services. It will also put money in the pockets of Canadians.
I'm sorry, Deputy Prime Minister and Mr. Chair, but there's kind of an expectation at the committee that if someone's appearing for 2 hours, I think it's a 10-minute opening statement. I mean, that's kind of what we've gone with, and I would love to have the minister come back for more time, and I'm sure we can talk about that later. But we have less than 50 minutes or so left for questions.
I'm sure the minister is close to concluding her opening remarks, but we want to hear from the minister with her opening remarks, and we were just at 8 minutes. So, Minister Freeland, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. My clock says it's 12:08, and I am coming to a conclusion.
We plan on putting money back in the pockets of Canadians more often by modifying the frequency of the climate action incentive. The payments will be made every 3 months instead of annually, along with the income tax returns. It also plans for provinces, and it allows provinces and territories to catch up on their surgery backlogs with an injection of $2 billion in healthcare transfers.
Bill C-19 will make a real difference in the lives of Canadians. It will help grow our economy, it will create good jobs, and it will help us to continue building a Canada where nobody is left behind. And so I hope that all honourable members here will support its swift passage through the House in the weeks to come. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank the finance officials who are with you there. They have worked so hard on this budget, on supporting Canadians, and I'm grateful to them for their presence today. Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Minister Freeland. And Minister Freeland, one thing I can say for our committee and for all parliamentarians and Canadians is that we do stand with Ukraine, and it was great to hear those remarks. We are going to move into our rounds of questions. We're starting with the Conservatives, and I have MP Fast up for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing virtually. I wish we had you here in person, and hopefully you'll come back for another hour before we finish our study on the BIA. First question, when will the budget be balanced going forward?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Fast, let me point out that one of the strengths of this budget is the clear fiscal responsibility with declining debt to GDP ratio, declining deficits. And as I pointed out in my opening remarks, S&P on Thursday reaffirmed Canada's AAA credit rating. It doesn't get better than that.
Well, Minister, I didn't ask about the credit rating, and you know that. I asked you a very specific question. When will the budget be balanced? And I'll give you a break. Is it in the short term, medium term, long term? Just give us an answer. I know we've asked you this question before. You are the finance minister. You should have an answer to that.
I gave a very clear answer, Mr. Fast, on the issue which is important to Canadians, which is to be assured that this budget presents, as it does, a clear and responsible fiscal track. That is indicated by the fact that the debt to GDP ratio is steadily declining, by a steadily declining deficit. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. And let me reaffirm here,
so
S&P,
no answer.
A ratings agency which is paid to determine
Minister,
the fiscal responsibility of countries, reaffirmed our AAA credit rating. That's what should matter to Canadians.
The question wasn't the credit rating. You know that. I'll go to my next question. In an earlier mandate letter from the Prime Minister directed to you, you were very specifically instructed not to engage in any new permanent spending. Since then, the economy has improved. Government revenues have improved, and yet you have engaged in new permanent spending programs. Why?
I'm glad to hear, Mr. Fast, an acknowledgement of the fact that both the Canadian economy has gotten stronger and therefore federal revenues have gotten stronger. That is absolutely the case and is, again, as I said, reflected in our strong credit rating. What our government believes in is a responsible fiscal path, which we have absolutely demonstrated in this budget, and also making the necessary investments in Canadians, which strengthen our economy. And one of those, let me point out, is early learning and childcare. We now have deals with all provinces and territories. This is particularly valuable today as Canada faces labor force shortages.
Yes, thank you. Minister, I'd like to ask you a question on the luxury tax. You are, I'm sure, familiar with the law of unintended consequences. And many in the boat business, many in the aircraft business, many in the car business are saying that the law of unintended consequences is going to catch up to you on this luxury tax. It is a complicated tax. It is a tax not only on boats, it's not just a tax on aircraft, it's also on improvements made after the fact to those products. And so my question is this: there are serious fears that this is going to undermine the competitiveness of those industries. There are serious concerns that the timing and implementation of this tax is going to mean that contracts are going to be lost because many of these products are custom made to a purchaser's specific requirements. And after the fact, they are now starting to cancel contracts because the tax has been applied after the fact, after these contracts will be actually finalized. So my question to you is, has Finance Canada done an assessment of the economic impacts this tax will have on the boat, car, and aircraft manufacturing sectors in Canada? And if so, what did those assessments show?
It's very interesting, Mr. Fast, to hear a conservative criticism of the luxury tax. We have a very clear mandate from Canadians to introduce this tax. Our government first proposed it in the budget last year, and it was clear in the campaign that this is something we intended to do. I certainly found widespread support at the door for this measure. So I think Canadians would be very interested to hear that Conservatives oppose it. This is an absolutely reasonable
Point of
measure
order, Mr.
that
Speaker.
ensures everyone in Canada pays their fair share.
Point of order. The minister, unfortunately, has misconstrued my comments. This was not a question about opposing this particular luxury tax.
Point of order.
The implementation of that tax.
Point of order. This is not a
She
point of
knows
order.
that.
Point of order.
This is
MP
not a
Baker.
point of order, Chair.
Yeah. Yes, it is not a point of order. We are moving now to the Liberals, and I have MP Chattel for 5 minutes, please.
Bonjour, Madame.
Hello, Madam Freeland. Welcome to the committee. My question is this. The world economy is transitioning to a greener, more digital economy. Some are saying that the next decade will be the decade of action. Can you tell the committee about government actions that will support small and medium businesses in this green transition? How will we make sure that these small and medium businesses, specifically in rural areas, how will they be supported by the government to have a spot in tomorrow's economy?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I would like to thank you, Mrs. Chattel, for the hard work you do in our communities. I would like to thank you also for the work you do in your rural riding. I agree with the two ideas that you included in your question. First, that the green transition is key for Canada and for the world. And secondly, that it's absolutely essential to include the rural economy in this green transition. I agree with you. And the budget works in this direction. I would like to highlight this. There is still work to be done, and I can't wait to tackle this with you. Let me give you some specific examples. I'd like to say that I think it's on page 84 in the budget. There's a specific section that speaks to rural economies and what we're doing for them. We understand that these areas have specific needs. Here are some important measures. One is the strategy for critical minerals. It's a $3.8 billion investment, which is important for the entire country, but specifically for rural communities. We doubled the tax deduction for labor mobility to $4,000. This is very important to allow people to move throughout the country. It's important also with regards to the labor shortage in rural areas. There are many other measures, but maybe I'll stop there and allow you to ask another question if you would like to. Yes, thank you very much. Madam Deputy Prime Minister, one of the important budget items are the investments in housing. As you know, the housing crisis is not just an urban issue. It's an issue that touches rural areas as well. There are many challenges that we face in regards to applying to existing programs. There were announcements that were made with the budget, but I'd like to hear you talk about how these budget proposals will help rural communities have better access to government support for housing.
Merci pour la...
Thank you for this question. I would like to start by saying how much I agree with you that housing is a key issue for all Canadians. Of course, Canadians in large cities like Toronto, where I am today, but also in rural communities. This is an extraordinarily important challenge because Canada, as a country, believes in population growth. We are a country that believes that immigration is an integral part of our society and our plan for economic growth. But a country with a growing population needs to build more houses. This is the fundamental challenge. For people in rural areas, the reality is that there are measures that will really help them. This tax-free savings account for the purchase of a first house is very important to young families. I'd also like to point out a measure that is linked to building strong rural communities. We will increase the maximum amount of loans, refundable loans, that represents $30,000 in refunds for farmers and $60,000 refunds in doctors that work in rural communities. This is very important. As you know, one of the issues for young families that want to stay in rural communities and for seniors. Thank you, Minister, MP Chatel and Minister.
And MP Sainte-Marie for 2.5 minutes, please.
No, I think we're starting the rounds over again, and I have 6 minutes with the Minister. Can you please confirm that?
Oh, I was just moving MP Sainte-Marie into the third round. I was moving through the third rounds the same way, members. So I did provide 5 minutes to the Conservatives and 5 minutes to the Liberals with a little bit of overrun.
Then in that time, with all due respect, I would like to appeal to your decision. Typically, when the minister visits a committee to respond to question in the second hours, we start with round one. Timing, I don't think I'll be able to tackle these important issues in 2.5 minutes, and I would ask that you allow us 5 minutes per party. Thank you, Member St. Maria. I'm looking around the table.
Okay, so MP Sainte-Marie for 5-6 minutes, yes.
Okay, merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and sorry for the inconvenience. Hello, Madam Minister. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. With my team, we started studying your Budget Implementation Act that is very long and very complex. I would like to say that there are many very interesting measures within this bill, and I look upon it favorably. Even though my time has just doubled, it is still limited, so I will focus my questions on the more problematic aspects. I would like some clarification in line with what Mr. Fast said. The Bloc agrees on the luxury tax. However, about an hour ago, the Department of Finance confirmed that no impact assessment has been done on the manufacturing sectors that would be affected by this luxury tax with regards to their income, the GDP, and others. So we're concerned about the fact that this assessment was not done before the tax was proposed. But I'd like to talk about the tax on luxury aircraft. So what we understand is that when an aircraft is used for businesses, the tax does not apply. But when it's used for personal use, then the tax does apply. I can tell you that the entire aerospace industry in Canada and Quebec and the business sector in the country is concerned because, as it's written in the Act, this tax is very concerning. It raises many questions. There are two main elements. One, the 90% business use threshold, and the second one is having to pay the tax on the entire production, including exports. For the first part, 90% of business use. The department said an hour ago, and this issue was raised by the industry, say Company A purchases a plane for business use. Because aircraft are so expensive, this company will hire a second company, Company B, to manage it when it's not in use. So sometimes Company B will rent out the aircraft to other clients. It could be business people for business use, but sometimes for personal use. What the department said an hour ago is that when the plane is sublet for personal use, this is included in the 10% use. It's not considered business use. Is that correct? Thank you for the question, for these two questions. Let's talk high level. I think we agree. Almost every Canadian agrees with us. A tax on luxury goods is a good idea, as long as it's fair and it's equitable. But at the same time, it's important to support Canadian businesses. We also have to consider the reality that this is a new tax. We have to study all of the details of the implementation carefully. I would like to say that the first declaration of this tax will be due at the end of January 2023. I know that your team and my team has already discussed your questions. We're also speaking with industry. We are very open to continuing this discussion. We want to make sure that the measures do what we all agree they should do. Can you assure us that before we vote on the Budget Implementation Act, the industry will receive clarifications with regards to their questions for the tax that must be paid on advance on exports and the issue of the 90% business use threshold? For us, for the industry, for Quebec's economy, it's a major sticking point, and we've received so many more questions than we have received clarifications. I can tell you that we are aware of these two issues. I think you've pointed out the two most important issues. I've asked officials to review the situation. We completely understand the importance of continuing this discussion with you and with the industry. I would also like to say that we are absolutely convinced of the importance of this tax. It's fair. I found through the campaign that this was the case. I hope you will agree that Canadians understand the idea of this tax. It's a new tax. And so we understand that it's important to clarify all of the details, and this is what we will do. Thank you. Thank you, MP St. Marie.
NDP, MP Blakey for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I wanted to follow up, Madam Minister, on a question having to do with with the GIS callbacks. I understand there is a small part of this bill that is meant to just kind of make some tweaks to help ensure that seniors aren't penalized for having availed themselves of pandemic benefits. But there isn't anything similar for working age families that rely on the Canada Child Benefit, who have also experienced clawbacks of the CCB as a result of having taken CERB or other kinds of pandemic income support. And I want to ask what your government's plan is to address those folks. I've had meetings with parents that have been affected by that CCB clawback. And, one of the things that's come out loud and clear from that group is that they're, unlike some of the seniors that were quite prepared to come forward and tell their story, there's a lot of folks who are recipients of the Canada Child Benefit that are worried about telling their story, either because they're worried about the kind of stigma and shame that can come with being a working age person who's been, facing difficult circumstances and now having to ask for help. They've expressed concern about their kids hearing about them, or people that their kids go to school with hearing about them and being made fun of on the playground if their parents are telling stories of hardship publicly. And so it's made it harder to make the issue a political issue for the government because they haven't been willing to come forward and tell their stories. But their suffering is no less real for all that. So I'm asking you what the government's plan is to address families that have been affected by the Canada Child Benefit clawback.
Can I go ahead, Mr. Chair? Yes. Okay. Well, first, thank you very much for the question. And thank you for your hard work and the collaboration. And thank you for pointing out the work we have done together on the GIS. I think, and seniors who received the CERB, I think there was a widespread consensus in Canada that our most vulnerable seniors were really particularly hard hit by the pandemic and the hardship it imposed. And this was an important action to take, and we're glad to be following up on it. When it comes to, and this was something that we were very clear about before tabling the budget, when it comes to further measures associated with pandemic support, it was very important in this budget to turn the page. It was very important to be clear that we had undertaken extraordinary spending during the pandemic. That was the right thing to do. It supported a lot of vulnerable people. And we're also seeing that it was economically the right policy. We prevented scarring, and Canada's economy really has come roaring back. But it was also very important to make clear with this budget that that period of extraordinary pandemic support was over, and we were facing a new set of economic challenges. I'm very sensitive to, and you make a very strong point about families and children and the inappropriate but real shame, social shame that people may feel if they are poor. And that's wrong. And I do want to acknowledge, I'm grateful to you for making that point. I will say this is a budget that believes in supporting working people. The Canada Workers Benefit is now will start to be delivered to people and will make a real difference. And then finally, I do also want to point to the fact that unemployment today at 5.3% is at the lowest level it has been since comparable figures were collected. That is a real accomplishment of our whole country and supports working people very much.
Do you want to jump in again before my time is over? I wanted to ask, Campaign 2000 has done excellent work in advocating for a low-income repayment amnesty on CERB. And I think one of the really important points on this file, I think there's some obvious moral arguments, but I think from a financial point of view, the question is, how much does the government how much does the government think that they're owed for CERB repayments? And how much does it actually anticipate collecting from low-income folks who are being asked to repay this money? And how much resources does it anticipate spending in order to chase that money that it may well not get back? And I appreciate that you may not be in a position to answer that right at the moment, but I would appreciate a written response with those three components for the committee. So what is the outstanding debt for CERB and CRB repayments as the department sees it? How much does it actually expect to get back and over what time period? And how much does it anticipate having to spend in terms of staff time and resources in order to chase that money? Because I think with those answers, we can get a sense of the value of a CERB low-income repayment amnesty, which certainly needs a better title. But I think this is a real live question in terms of, how much government resources are going to be spent over the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years in order to recover a relatively small amount of money that's not going to make a big or a big difference in the life of the government or in the government books, but is going to have huge consequences for the people who are being asked to pay that money back. So I would ask for a follow-up in writing on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Blakey and Minister. And since we did that reset to the first round, we're now moving into our second round, and I do have MP Albus up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you for being here. Minister, back in the 41st Parliament, I've tabled a bill on Free My Grapes to break down trade barriers for the wine industry. It was a 3-page bill, including the cover sheet, the summary, and the actual bill. That took an hour in front of the Finance Committee of that day. Here, you've introduced a 421-page bill, and you're only here for an hour. Do you feel that that's ministerial accountability?
Very good to see you, Mr. Albus. And I think one measure that you are probably happy to see, I won't speak for you, but let me suggest that you may be glad to see in this bill is that we're eliminating the excise duty on low alcohol beer, effective as of July 1st, 2022. Preparing for this conversation, I thought of you and I thought that's something that I would highlight.
Yes, the question was about the time that's being provided.
Point of order. That's not a point of order.
Not a point of order, yes, yeah.
Well, she didn't answer the question, so.
Yeah, if I can.
MP Albus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, I noticed you didn't answer that. Second, let's talk about what is in here for wineries. Minister, we're 9 weeks before July 1st, and that's when the exemption for 100% Canadian content ends. Many, many wineries that have opened up since 2007 have never paid a cent in excise, and now they will be charged for that. Now, Minister, in your own Budget Implementation Act here, page 308, it talks about, page 106, it talks about a grandfathering for product that is made before. However, supply issues are making it so that people cannot bottle their wine. They're not finding the bottles. Do you take some responsibility for this? Will you support an amendment to allow for that product that has been made before July 1st that is not bottled to still be considered excise exempt?
Thank you for the question. And look, I think that everyone around this table agrees that the growth of Canada's wine sector over the past 15 years, past couple of decades, is a huge national success story, and we support that sector. Mr. Albus, you're sitting next to Mr. Fast, a former trade minister. And I think that you will also agree that honoring our international trade obligations is essential to Canada's economy and to our credibility as an international player. As you know, the excise tax repeal stems from a WTO obligation and a dispute we settled with Australia in July 2020. We committed as part of that settlement to the repeal of the exemption by June 30th, 2022. I'm sure no member of this committee would wish Canada to be offside on our trade obligations and commitments.
Well, Minister, if you don't do something, many of these businesses that have never paid that will have a huge bill, and they will have very little profits from previous years to pay for it. What I would also suggest, Minister, is that the Minister of Agriculture and yourself have not put forward a replacement program. Do you take responsibility for that?
What I take responsibility for, Mr. Albus, is supporting the Canadian economy and supporting Canada's fair and honest participation in the rules-based international trading system. it's important for us to be reliable players who keep our word. This is a dispute that we settled with Australia in July of 2020. Let me also point out that as we announced in the budget last year in 2021, we will be providing over $100 million to support wineries in adapting to ongoing and emerging challenges.
Yeah, well, again, the wineries say that that's not going to match it. Let's move on, Minister. So page 56 of the BIA says an assignment of agreement where you collect HST now. Minister, are you aware that this will likely cost housing to go up as well as government revenues?
Our housing plan is about bringing in fairness to the system, ensuring everyone pays their fair share, and cutting down on speculation. The change on assignment sales is a very important part of that. And again, I think Canadians would be very interested to hear that the Conservative Party supports speculation in the housing sector. We certainly do not. We think homes should be for Canadian families, not a speculative financial asset.
Yeah. That's the time, MP Albus. That's 5 minutes. And now we're moving to the Liberals, MP Baker, for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, and thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister, for being here with us today. As we all know, over 2 months ago, Russia began a full-scale further invasion of Ukraine. And we know that the Ukrainians have been outmanned and outgunned, and despite that, they've shown great courage in defending their homeland. And I think that courage has inspired Canadians, and it's inspired people, I think, around the world. Notwithstanding that courage and resolve, the situation in Ukraine is, of course, dire. This is an existential issue for the Ukrainian people. It's a humanitarian disaster with Russia committing war crimes every day and committing genocide, in my opinion. And it's a threat not only to Ukraine's security, but to global security and to Canada's security. So Ukrainians are not just fighting for themselves, for their own freedom and for their own homeland, but they're fighting for all of us, and we need to fight for them. And you, Deputy Prime Minister, have been helping to lead that fight. Some of that has been in public. Much of that has been behind the scenes, as it is for ministers and MPs in our democracy. And I wanted to thank you for your leadership on this issue. Дякую. My first question to you is regarding the fact that you allocated $500 million in funding for military aid to Ukraine and $1 billion in loans for Ukraine in the budget. So I want to thank you for that. President Zelensky has indicated that Ukraine urgently needs heavy weapons. Could you tell us how soon the $500 million in funding could be deployed?
Okay, well, дякую тобі. Thank you very much, Yvonne and Mr. Baker, for the question. And look, our Parliament, our political discourse in Canada is naturally adversarial, and that is part of us being a healthy democracy. But there are issues where we all agree. And I have to say, I'd like to thank you, Ivane, for your work on Ukraine, but I also want to recognize the Conservatives, the Bloc, the NDP, for their support of a very strong Canadian position on Ukraine, for the clarity with which Canada has recognized that this war is illegal, that it is barbaric, that war crimes are being committed, and for the unanimous consent on the genocide motion. I've discussed all of these measures and really the unanimous Canadian support for Ukraine directly with Prime Minister Shmyhal, and it really does make a difference. It makes a difference in terms of encouraging other countries to support Ukraine. It makes a difference for the Ukrainians to know that we as a country are there for them, and that really this is one point on which we agree. So thank you, everyone. On the military aid, I agree with you, Mr. Baker. It is the Ukrainians who are fighting and dying. They are fighting our fight. It is our responsibility to be sure they have the tools to do the job. That's why we did specifically earmark $500 million in the budget for military aid. And that aid is being sent from Canada. Our allies are sending aid as well. Last week, Minister Anand announced, for example, that Canada has finalized a contract for 8 armored vehicles manufactured by Rochelle. As I know you are aware, Canada is also providing M777 howitzers, and we have provided Carl Gustaf anti-armor ammunition.
Speaker, just before you commence, members, the bells are ringing. I see that we have the minister still for another 15 minutes. I'm looking for unanimous consent to continue. Yes, okay. We have unanimous consent. MP Baker?
Do I have about 40 seconds? Is that right, Chair?
You have about a minute, yeah.
About a minute. Minister, if the BIA were passed, it would allow the Government of Canada to seize and cause the forfeiture and disposal of assets held by sanctioned people and entities. So can you just speak to, in the remaining time, why you've included the measure in the BIA this year? And do you know what the approximate value is of the assets that are held by those people and entities sanctioned by Canada because of their support of Russia's invasions of Ukraine? And I'm asking this because I'm interested in knowing how much in assets could Canada possibly seize?
Thank you very much for the question. This is a very important part of the BIA. It is a new step when it comes to the reach of sanctions. It's an area where Canada is definitely providing leadership to our allies around the world. We moved first, and we're now seeing other partners also put forward similar legislation. And I will point out, Mr. Baker, that just a few days after we tabled the budget, announcing that we intended to do this, President Zelensky addressed a group at the World Bank and called on countries to put forward such legislation. The fact is, rebuilding Ukraine will cost tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. It is highly appropriate for some of that funding to come from the seized assets of the country that has been doing the destroying and the killing.
Thank you. Thank you, MP Baker. Minister, and we're moving to the block, and MP Sainte-Marie for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. D'abord.
Thank you, Chair. First, a comment. I was very moved by the exchange that we have just seen between the Deputy Prime Minister and Mr. Baker. Clearly, we all stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. I cannot imagine that today, again, this conflict is ongoing, this Russian invasion of Ukraine by the Russians, and the implications that it has for the millions of individuals, and we stand with them with all of our hearts. Thank you. I'd like to come back to the luxury tax for aircraft. So there was the 90% threshold criteria in terms of the business use, and that's problematic. I've mentioned it briefly. In addition to this, even if the tax were not to apply to aircraft that are exported, it is still prepaid by the manufacturer before reimbursement. And this is done on a quarterly basis. And industry has told us that often it takes longer because the planes have to be changed and tailor-made to customer requirements, so the planes can stay for another 6 months in Canada before the aircraft are exported. And so what happens is that there is a cash flow issue, and a very serious one. So my question for the minister is this. Does the minister believe that she can provide satisfactory and fulsome answers to industry and to us before we vote on this Budget Implementation Act? Thank you for the question. Briefly, I simply want to say that in terms of Ukraine, I've expressed to my Ukrainian counterparts and explained to them the support that they have from the bloc and from the Quebec nation, and it was touching for the Ukrainians to know this. And it's touching for me as well. I think We understand this issue, and it's very much appreciated. Now, in terms of the luxury tax and aerospace, I wish to emphasize that philosophically, I think we are in agreement. We understand the importance of the aerospace sector, and at the same time, we understand the importance of having a fair taxation system. A luxury tax is really a component of this system. Exports made directly by registered sellers are not subject to the luxury tax. First of all, I'd like that to be clear. Second of all, I am aware of the, perhaps we could term it technical element that you've raised. We are discussing this and analyzing it. It's being dealt with in the department, and we're going to continue to examine it. We are prepared to continue to talk about this with you, and of course, we are talking to industry about it. Thank you, Mr. St. Marie.
And MP Blakey for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Madam Minister, the budget set aside billions of dollars in funding for climate projects. It was somewhat vague on what projects in particular were meant to be funded, but it was very specific about how the money was meant to flow, and it's meant to flow through the Infrastructure Bank. Except that the Infrastructure Bank has had a pretty terrible record on project delivery. The PBO from time to time has commented that it's not even close to being on track to spending its budgeted amount over the kind of 10 to 11 year life cycle of its initial funding. Where it has had some success, to the extent that it has been partnering with municipalities for the purchase of electric buses, but that has been outside of its kind of public-private mandate. And in that area, which is also what the budget talks about, trying to attract private capital, the bank has simply not been a success. So I'm wondering why your government chose to use an unsuccessful investment vehicle as its principal way to deliver project funding for projects meant to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And let me underscore the extent to which this budget truly is a green budget, with a very strong emphasis on investing in the green transition. And I'm glad that you're posing the question from an economic direction, because I think it's important for us as a country to understand the green transition, of course, as a moral obligation to fight climate change. But I think we also need to understand this is an economic imperative. The world is going green. Canada is a trading nation. We need to be sure we're in the vanguard, not left behind. We have invested our government heavily in the green transition. We've invested nearly $100 billion in clean growth in many different ways. Some of those investments go through the SIF, directly in supporting industries that are making the green transition. I think that the area that you are focused on in this question is our Canada Growth Fund, and our view that it's going to be very important to attract more private capital in the green transition. That is absolutely what the Canada Growth Fund will do. Our intention is that we should crowd in $3 of private money for every dollar of public money which is invested. And the reality is, the magnitude of the green economic transition is such that government funding alone will not be able to accomplish the scale of change we need. And so it is absolutely appropriate for us as a country to find ways to bring in that investment.
Yeah, okay. I know we got a lot to talk on green. We're up with MP Chambers for the Conservatives, and MP Chambers, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Prime Minister, thank you for coming. Since it's the first time you've been at the committee since the start of the war, I wanted to say that I commend the government's actions with respect to pushing back on the Russian Federation, and I know you've done a lot of work on that. It's a cause personal to you, and I want you to know that you'll have support to go even further, and I think we can go further to be much harsher on the regime, and hope we do. But I have a couple simple questions that I hope we can get to. Do you believe that consumption taxes like the carbon tax is inflationary?
So let me just quickly acknowledge the point on Ukraine and to recognize, as I did in speaking to Mr. Baker, that this is action that has cross-party support. And I do also want to particularly recognize Mr. Fast's strong personal commitment to acting on Ukraine. When it comes to a price on pollution, this is the most economically effective way to drive the changes we need in our economy. And I do want to point out that the proceeds of this price on pollution are returned directly to Canadians.
So I didn't hear an answer there. There are a number of officials here that could give the technical answer to that question. Do you believe it's inflationary? Yes or no?
As I said, the important elements of the price on pollution are two. One, that it is the most economically effective driver.
There's no answer there,
change.
Mr. Chair, so I'm going to
And second of
continue.
all, the price on pollution is very important. It's very important to note that this is revenue neutral and the money is returned directly to Canadian families.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how you'd like me to proceed here. It's true that Canadians don't, not all Canadians and businesses get a rebate. Businesses don't, farmers don't get a full deduction on the carbon tax. It is inflationary. That's the correct answer to the question. The carbon tax is inflationary. It's been confirmed by the Bank of Canada, and not everybody gets a rebate. And in fact, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said a number of people, in particular in Ontario, over half, don't actually get back more than what they pay. So I guess the question, the next question is why, when we're in an affordability crisis, does the government not take the single easiest measure it can do to reduce the costs to the economy, which is to reduce the carbon tax or reduce any kind of taxes, especially when the government's awash in all new revenue?
Let me just point out that our government believes in economic literate policy. It is a truth widely acknowledged among economists that a price on pollution is the most economically effective way to promote the green transition. Second, let me point out that it is the Conservatives who have been obstructing at every turn the passage of Bill C-8. This is a bill that would support
Mr. Chair, I'm going to jump in here because I'm not sure I
which
have
you have
the question.
Raised when it comes to the rebate, and that is a direct answer to the problems Canadian farmers
with
are
respect,
facing.
with respect, Minister,
Conservatives are blocking it.
Minister, just difficult with the crosstalk. So, and MP Chambers.
Let's talk about the rebate for a second in C8 for farmers. Farmers will get about 20 cents on the dollar for carbon tax through the rebate in C8. Conservatives have called for a full deduction, which is provided for diesel and regular fuel. And for farmers, including one in my riding, Larry, who is carbon tax bill on natural gas just for the month of October was $13,000. Where do we think that money's coming from? And further, we talk about prices going up and up and up. Do we not think that the carbon tax is leading to increase in transportation costs, increase in food costs? So again, how is it possible? Like, this government has ignored, and you in particular have ignored the warnings of inflation for the last year, despite a number of people, including your mentor, Larry Summers, who's been warning about inflation for 12 months or more, and yet it's global, it's transitory, it is clearly not any of those things, and yet there's some simple things the government can do to make life more affordable, and Canadians woke up the day after the budget with no immediate relief. So I find it hard to believe that this government is going to continue down that path.
Chambers, a very short answer, Minister.
Okay, let me just say, S&P reaffirmed our AAA credit rating, a number of measures on affordability in this budget, and the price on pollution, economically the most effective way to act on climate change.
Thank you, MP Chambers. And we're going to the Liberals, MP Zarowitz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, for being with us today and answering our questions. We've been spending a lot of time talking about the spend within federal budget 2022, but I believe that the vast majority of the budget, and at least 60% of the budget, is actually allocated towards growing the economy in Canada. Can you talk to the key elements, what you think the key elements are around economic growth, and why you think the focus on economic growth is so important?
Thank you very much, Ms. Jarowitz. And I am glad that you are posing this question, because I know that this is an area that you have worked on very, very hard, including in the development of the measures in the budget. We were very clear in putting together this budget and in presenting it to Canadians that one of the things Canada needs right now is a growth strategy. I pointed out in my initial remarks that the IMF sees Canada having the strongest growth in the G7 this year and next year. But we also need to be candid with each other as Canadians, that our country, medium and long term, needs to move to a higher gear when it comes to growth, productivity, investment. This budget, therefore, proposes some key pillars that will help us do that. One is the Canada Growth Fund that we discussed earlier with Mr. Blakey. This will crowd in private investment to the green transition. A second is a new innovation and investment agency to help tackle this very Canadian challenge of translating our high degree of education, our high degree of excellent world-leading research into commercialization, into productivity for our businesses. And then finally, a really important element is the $3.8 billion that we're investing in our critical minerals strategy. More important now than ever with Russia's war in Ukraine. The world needs critical minerals. Canada is such an important supplier. This is important in the green transition, and we're investing to really, really drive that sector.
Thank you so much. And I know that also our investment in our national childcare program is also going to help with economic growth moving forward. The next thing I want to ask about is around inflation. You know, if I go to the average Davenport resident, they would say to me that what they're worried about every single day is just the rising costs and also just the unpredictability about what's going to be happening as we move forward. And so given that it's top of mind not only for Davenport residents but also all Canadians, how do you think that elements or key elements in Budget 2022 is going to help Canadians with the current rising costs of many key staple items in Canada?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Jarowitz. And I will say economic growth, having a job, these are key elements to affordability for every Canadian family. And the historically low unemployment rate is good news for us all. There are also a number of specific measures in the budget to help with affordability. Dental care, doubling the support provided through the first-time home buyers tax credit, the new multi-generational home renovation tax credit, the $500 payment one-off for people facing particular housing affordability challenges, And of course, you mentioned early learning and childcare. We now have deals with every province and territory in Canada. Fees are going to go down by 50% this year. You and I have campaigned together in your riding, and we talked to people standing outside on their lawns with their children, talking about how childcare is like a second mortgage. For those young families, this is a real answer to the question of affordability.
Thank you.
Minister, thank you, MP Zerowitz.
I have 2 minutes left.
That is the time. So, and we are all looking. We're going to go to a vote. We do want to thank the
point of order,
the minister
Mr.
on behalf. Point of order.
Point of order.
MP Chambers.
It's always nice to be joined by ministers at committees. I wanted to just put out there for my colleagues. There is the inflation study before this committee, which had the minister appearing for 3 hours, and so I would welcome her back for that. But if we are hoping to get quick passage of this bill, I think we need to be very acknowledge that we do have this outstanding request, and so for me, I would look forward to that. I would hate to see, I want to see continued accountability with our executive branch.
Thank you, MP Chambers, and we want to thank the minister. We're sorry that you got there was a fog in Toronto. We're not able to make it in here in person, but luckily we are doing things virtually, and we've had you for this hour answering many questions. Thank you very much, Minister, for coming before our committee and all your officials and the many questions that have been answered. We really appreciate it. That on behalf of our Finance Committee. Thank you, and have a great day.
Quickly, if I may, I would like to thank the committee, all of the members of the committee, and the officials from Finance. Thank you so much for your work, for your questions, and thanks to your teams. Thank you.